There we go. We just started the live transmission directly to the rest of the world. Europe, Asia, Africa, America, Australia. America. There we are. El Salvador, Colombia, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. Panama, of course, Panama. Venezuela. Argentina. Argentina is having its elections. Here we have Mexico, Honduras. I already said Mexico, El Salvador, Dominican Republic, Peru, United States, Cuba, Venezuela, Colombia. How beautiful. Let's go, let's go. Don't stop. Puerto Rico, I already said Dominican Republic, Panama as well. Don't stop that applause because the Lord is in the house. Someone has to greet and celebrate more than that. Please take your seats. How do they let you all in with flags? May God bless you. May He keep you. Thank you for being there. Thank you for being a part of this. It's a very eclectic community, very cosmopolitan. It's a diaspora that is composed by people from all over the world, and the same is true for the other side. People that can't come here for financial reasons or legal reasons, but they connect with us and they're part of this marvelous family. Because all the offerings, all the tithes don't just come from the local church. Seeds also come from people from all over the world that say, continue on, don't stop. So thank you for being there for so many years. With that being said, welcome to all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, according to whatever time zone you're watching from. We have something that lasts no more than 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, but it always has to do with an account of where our money goes. In this case, I'd like you to see what happens with a group of children that come to our river school in Africa. They're the new acquisition, and here's what's going to happen. This has to do with us, with our seeds, and with believing that though you cannot change the entire world, we can make the difference for a small group. And man, whoever lends to these little children is also lending to the Lord. We are River in Uganda.
Our academy has started with an ambition of helping these young children from the slums of Nkumba, whereby most of them come from disadvantaged backgrounds. Surprisingly, some of them do not even know their parents. That's why we ended up starting this academy. We focus on football. Our main ambition is to see that these young children grow up God-fearing children so that they can achieve from their talent and they can really shine in the future. They did not have a chance of going to school. They were staying home. The River School, they're going to be giving us that help of educating these young children, promoting their talent, adding on them what they do not have. That is really a big opportunity.
ridiculous. You saw how they were sleeping and how they were living, and to suddenly be taken to our school, it completely and absolutely changes the quality of their life, because they had a sort of football academy that had them living in inhumane conditions. It was very rough, and suddenly, thanks to our seed, thanks to your seed, we can help them to be a little bit better. They're far away geographically, but let us always remember, as I say, every week when we get on the highway, on the freeway, to go to our office or our business or our job, and it's tough for us because it's Monday and it's uphill, let's know that if part of that seed that they're paying us, if it goes to one of these children, it's worth your effort. It's worth your labors and your sweat. Yes? Very well. Are we ready, people? Yes or no? Well, some years ago, a good friend of mine began his pastoral ministry very close to here. And he was very enthusiastic to serve the Lord. He asked me a series of questions. I've been in the area a little bit longer than he has. But then later on, I re-encountered him, and he looked extremely tired, depressed, with serious symptoms of anxiety, and a great desire to abandon it all and dedicate himself to something else. I knew him from Argentina, but had never seen him so exhausted, so extenuated. And he came to the conclusion and said, I'm no good at this. I'm no good for this. I've known him my entire life, and I know that he's a very compassionate, loving man, and above all, a very noble, good person. He could not deal with someone leaving his presence without receiving the help they were looking for. He basically lived at his congregation to attend to anyone that needed counseling, whether it be 2 a.m., 4 a.m. He was the typical all-terrain pastor that was available to all at any hour. He offered counseling. He would visit hospitals. He would officiate funerals. He would present children. He would celebrate weddings. He would bury mother-in-laws. He wouldn't miss any birthdays. You could almost say that he basically lived in the temple. Not literally, but he spent many hours there. However, his emotional health and physical health began to wither, and every minute of his time was jammed up with an endless list of activities. He didn't even have time to prepare a fresh, new message for Sunday, the message which feeds his sheep. He didn't have time to prepare anything, so sometimes he would rearrange something or invite someone else. And I remember in a conversation with him, he said, I know I'm supposed to help people. That's why I'm in the business of the kingdom, but I'm burnt out and I'm emotionally broken. My congregation does not grow to more than 100 people, and I'm done. I've run out of my spiritual gasoline. I encountered him a few times more to have breakfast, to talk about how things were going, and we came to the conclusion that my friend, I say that we arrived at the conclusion because we did it together, we concluded that my friend was not capable of drawing out his own boundaries. He was chosen for a specific purpose that he was not able to discern, and the lack of barriers had ran his oil dry, and that is why he wanted to abandon the purpose of his call. Another example in real life, an adult woman, about 40 years old, doesn't know how to tell her own mother that she doesn't feel like spending New Year's with her. That instead, she'd prefer to stay home, to be with her husband, with her children, because she wants this New Year's to be a different celebration. She's not leaving the mother alone because her mom lives with her dad, of course, the mother's husband. It's not that she's abandoning her in a retirement home. She just communicates to her mother that she doesn't feel like spending this New Year's with her. This woman that, like I said, is about 40 years old, or a little bit older than 40. At the beginning of December, she begins to stress out and calls her sister and says, you know what, I don't feel like spending New Year's at Mom's house. I don't know what excuse to make up, because I don't want her to feel bad, and I don't want to feel like a bad daughter. And her daughter advises her and says, hey, you can't do that to Mom, because you know how important it is for her to have all her children, all her sons and daughters around her table. We don't know how many years of life she has left. Her mom's not about to die. You know, she's been saying these types of threats since she was 40 years old, but we don't know how many years of life she has left. You have to make the effort. You have to be there no matter what. I'm going to do the same, the sister said. She said, I don't feel like being there either, but you know we can't hurt her. You know how Mom is. This 40-year-old adult woman feels responsible for her mother's feelings, nor is she capable, just like my pastor friend, she's incapable of drawing her boundaries. She is incapable of calling her mom and saying, hey, you know what, Mom, you know I love you a lot. That's not up for debate. That's a non-negotiable. I love you, but this year I'm going to spend New Year's in my own home with my husband and with my children. Maybe the following day I'll be able to go and visit you. If her mom gets upset or plays the victim, she could say to her, I'm very sorry, Mom, that you have become upset with me, but you're going to have to manage this because you're an adult woman and so am I. I am not going to go to your home this year. It's not because I'm upset or because I'm trying to get some revenge, but simply because I've made a different decision. This can sound cruel, yes, but this determination would help the daughter more than the mother. Making an adult decision or doing what she feels like doing would show that she doesn't always have to be obligated to doing what others want so that they don't get offended. That is the essence of boundaries. Where do I end and where does the other person begin? Being a Christian, being full of God, is not that the limits or the boundaries become gray or blurry and that we have to be available to everyone, otherwise they may get offended. No, boundaries are lines that create a limit, a boundary in a psychological way. They form the base of our personality. A limit tells us who we are and who we're not, what we're going to decide and what we're not going to decide, what we're going to bear and tolerate and what we will not bear and tolerate, because we're adults. This isn't necessarily implying that we don't have the fruits of the Spirit or that we're not full of God. No, it's what we want and what we don't want. In few words, boundaries define us. They assign us our identity and personality in the same way that a physical limit defines where a property line begins and ends. A psychological and spiritual limit, an emotional limit, defines who we are and who we are not. So basically, a limit is simply a line, a property line. That's a limit. It clarifies where we end and where the other person begins. And we should never lose that. If I have a home with a garden, I am responsible for what is contained within my property line. If I would like to remove the leaves in my garden, I should take them. If not, they're going to remain on my grass because it's my private property. In the same way, my responsibility ends where my fence stands, where my limit ends. If my neighbor's lawn has leaves, I cannot be so petulant or so presumptuous as to jump over the fence that separates us and remove the leaves without their permission. If I want to help in any case, I should ask, hey, do you want me to give you a hand with the leaves? And they'll decide if they'll open the door and allow me to cross that barrier, or they'll say, what do you care, you nosy Hispanic? I love having leaves on my lawn, but that's their option. That person is not being rude. It's not that you can't talk to them. No, it's whatever they want to do on their lawn is up to them. If they want to clean, not clean, If they want to leave the junk there, as long as that junk doesn't come onto my side of the fence, that's their property. And so this pastor friend of mine was willing to abandon his calling and his ministry due to his lack of ability of drawing out clear lines with his own congregation. He always did everything that others wanted him to do. People are always going to ask us for more. It's the same people that when we get sick, they tell us, "Oh, why don't you take care of yourself?" "Oh, but you made me sick, you fool." "Oh, take care of yourself, rest." But in all orders of life, people that sometimes drain us are the ones that are visiting us in the hospital and demand that we take vacations, right? But sometimes you do things, even just like my friend, even above what God wanted him to do. Because you can say, well, God gave him that calling, he gave him the ministry. No, he did things that he confessed to me. He would say, "I don't know if God sent me to do all that." And I would say, "Why don't you delegate? Don't you have pastors?" Yeah, but I feel guilty. I'm scared that the people will get offended, that they'll say that I don't have that pastoral heart. So since he felt obligated to serving, he couldn't say no. He couldn't say no to anything. So his lack of boundaries led him to what? Into chaos, chronic fatigue, depression. He was totally burnt out and out of control. And in my friend's case, it's not an isolated case. It's not something that is exclusive to just preachers. No, many people struggle with drawing their boundaries, and so their lives end up losing the purpose of their call, the purpose of their lives. They get lost in other people's expectations. Now, limits are an idea that was born in the heart of God. During creation, God gave the oceans and the seas their limits. When there's a change in weather, the tragedy occurs or the misfortune occurs of a tsunami. But oceans have limits. Mountains have their limits. He clearly knows who he is and who he's not. God is not the God of pantheism. Pantheism is that philosophical belief that God and the universe are the same thing. You must have heard that the cosmos, may the universe and God help me, as if God is confused with the universe. No, God is a separate being from his creation. He knows where he ends and where we begin as his creation. And given the fact that his will is separate from ours, and we are two distinct people with separate identities, that is why we can have a real relationship with him. We are not angels that have no choice but to serve, because we were not created like angels. We can decide to have a real relationship with him. In the same way, since we were created in his likeness, as human beings, we're also separate from one another. Here and at home, we have wills, personalities, talents, responsibilities that are all different from one another. And as I tend to say, in our unity, there's a whole lot of diversity. Unity is not about uniformity. We shouldn't all think the same, dress the same, speak the same, because more than a church, then that's just North Korea. We have to be connected with all the rest without losing our identity and our own individuality. You can never lose that, because it's the nicest thing we have, the most beautiful thing we have, our individuality. But as human beings, we tend to be very confused as far as where we end and where the other person begins. This comes from the fall of Eden, where our boundaries were destroyed. Adam said that it was the woman's fault. "Oh, the woman you gave me. Oh, but you sinned. Ah, but it was the woman you gave me." The first thing he did was blame her. That's why from then on out, God never chooses a woman for any man. He says, "No, you look for her, because if not, I'm the one you're going to blame." When people say, "Oh, that's what God gave me." No, God stopped choosing women for men. He asks Eve, "Woman, what did you do?" And Eve says, "Oh, well, it was the serpent's fault. The serpent told me to eat." Good thing God didn't ask the serpent why he did that, because he could have said, "Oh, the giraffe told me to." No one took responsibility for their actions. And this is a reflective act of human beings, blaming others. But God continually self-defines himself by saying who he is not, what he loves, what he hates or despises. Genesis 17:1 affirms, I am your God Almighty. Exodus 25 says, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. I don't like sharing you. I want you to be exclusive, exclusively mine. Exodus 22:27 says, Leviticus 11:44 says, for I am the Lord, for I am holy. His will, his personality, his character defines who he is. But just like the positive things define who he is, also his negative statements define who he is. Not the negative things in God's character, but his negative statements. For example, he also says what he is not when he describes what he hates. Proverbs 6:16 says, there are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. The majority of you were left out. 7 things. So the biblical authors enumerate the things that God loves and the things that God hates so that we can understand who God is. There you understand his total character, what he likes and what he doesn't like. If not, we would only know what God likes and we wouldn't know what he doesn't like. Or imagine a God that we only know what he doesn't like, yet we don't know what he loves. So all the things, the positive and the negative, define the limits of who God is. And we also have to be defined by similar limits. A great portion of our identity comes from positive affirmations of who we are. For example, we say, I love soccer, or I believe in Jesus Christ. We're affirming positive things about who we are. On a romantic date, we might say, I love soccer. From time to time, I drink a beer. Not me. I'm talking about one of you guys. I want my mother-in-law to come around like the comet Halley every 50 years, etc. These are positive things. But we can also use negative statements the way God does. For example, we can say, I hate gossip. It's also a very important statement about our identity. I hate pupusas. It's overvalued. It's a bit of flour with pork but I know many people that don't know who they are not. That is why they can't draw those boundaries. They know all that they are, but they don't know what they're not. And out of fear of not offending anyone and trying to please the entire world, they were never able to give themselves no. I always share that at the age of 40, I wanted to give myself something that I couldn't buy in a store. In fact, something that nobody else could give me because it doesn't have an intrinsic value, but it has a spiritual value. So I asked myself, what can I give myself? And I gave myself the no. Because my yes was so easy. My mother would say, good thing you weren't born a woman. You would be pregnant all the time, son. Can I make a child with you? Yeah, just to not offend anyone. So at 40, I gave myself the no. I said, no, there are things that I don't want to do. No, that's something marvelous because you say, no, I don't think I'll continue to work for that measly sum of money. No, I won't allow bad words to be said under this roof. No, I don't feel like going to that party, even if they get offended. I'm not going to go anywhere out of pity, out of commitment. No, I don't want to continue in this toxic relationship. I don't want to. Nope, I don't agree with your theology. No, I don't like that movie, so I'm not going to applaud like a seal for a movie that doesn't build me up just because everyone's watching it, because it's become viral online. Nope, I don't give advice at 3 a.m. because it's my time to rest. Nope, this year, Mom, I don't want to spend the holidays in your home. If we cannot clearly say who we are not, then we'll never be able to live with authenticity. And so, people with weak limits or barriers simply cannot reject what is not good for them. If our children don't know how to say no, then they're going to try drugs because it's in fashion. They're going to end up like zombies due to fentanyl or because everyone's trying it. So we can't reject the bad things if our no is unclear. So it's marvelous to know yourself and say, those are the things that I am not. I am not that. So we should be able to say what I am not, to then find our true selves, because if not, we'll just mold ourselves. So until it's clear to us what we do not like, we'll never know clearly what we do like. If we never say no to anything, then our yes is going to mean very little. If we say no to anything, what is our yes worth? Nothing. If we never disagree with anything, with our opinions, our convictions, then they don't mean much either. If we're always approving anything just to not be the bad guy. Paul writes to Ephesus in Ephesians 4:14, so that we may no longer be children, tossed to and fro by the waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine. Well, we basically have two options, yes or no. Not just any bus can be the one that we ride. We can't be someone that says, yeah, I'm going anywhere. So we can either opt to do something or we can opt to not do that thing. We can opt in to give to someone or we can opt out to not give to someone. In any case, we're responsible for the consequences. So many adult people go to parties, they go to weddings, they go to funerals, they go to baby showers, and they don't actually want to go, but they go so that their friend doesn't get offended, because what will they say? Because they're incapable of saying no. They're not denying anyone's salvation. They're not sending anyone to hell. They're just saying, no, at that time I like to meditate, or I like to watch TV, or I read the Bible, or I don't do anything. Like Christian Castro, nothing. So there are people that dedicate entire weekends to doing things that they don't want to do. And that's how they spend their lives. Throwing their lives overboard 1 year at a time. Fulfilling commitments with people that they don't want to be with. That's not love. That's not being more Christian than others. That is wasting your greatest capital, which is your time. Because I get it. Going to a place with a purpose or with desire. But if there is no desire and there is no purpose, you can't imagine the people that serve in a congregation all week, and not out of love, but because they cannot give themselves the ability to say no. And so the pastor or their immediate leader says you have to come to the prayer group, you have to come to the cell group, you have to come. And since they can't say no, they're afraid of offending, they go to every event. Who ends up getting burnt out? Well, the person that goes to every event, because the pastor can take a sabbatical if he wants, but the poor member, the poor volunteer has to continue on. And some live with that martyr syndrome, sacrificing their own desires, awakening feelings of pity in others. There are parents who sacrifice time and money for their children, which is very noble. I love it. But then they try to make them feel guilty. My mom used to say to me, oh, if it weren't for Dante, if we didn't have to pay for your school, then we could have gone on vacation. Well, why didn't we go on vacation? Well, son, because I bled myself dry so that you could have a future. My mother bled herself dry. I felt guilty for breathing and existing. I would enter my home saying, I'm sorry for existing, I'm sorry. So, can we complain about how bored we are? Yes, but we have to accept the responsibility and say, I'm going to find a new hobby, a new pastime. There are people that get upset with their pastor here and all over the world, but they don't take responsibility by saying, oh, well, let me go to another church where the pastor doesn't upset me. Who is obligating them to congregate where they're unhappy? It's tough for me to understand how there are unhappy people. Oh, I can't stand it. God placed me here. That's why I'm here. No, God didn't place you here. I always say, if you're not happy, why are you going to stay? You have to go to a congregation that makes you happy. So we don't allow ourselves the no, and then we blame others. So to summarize in simple terms, our life, our emotional life, our psychological life, our spiritual life should have clear limits, because all of us possess a finite amount of capacity, of time, of money, of energy. We're not infinite in energy nor in time, because we're not omnipresent, we're not omniscient, we're not omnipotent. So it takes time to learn our limits in the diverse areas of our lives. But man, can we learn about them if we are aware of our feelings, of our conduct, of our capacities, of our limited energy. If we feel like we have too many burdens, like this pastor friend that I told you about, then we have to rearrange or re-administer where we're exceeding our limits, because then we'll end up burnt out. And a short career of someone that got burnt out is no good to God. Someone that ended up with a heart attack in a hospital because they carried a cross that didn't correspond to them. If our neighbor were to throw junk in our garden, we would face them. We would confront them and speak with them. Or we might even call the police. We have to do the same thing when somebody crosses our limits of time and energy, to say, no, this isn't wrong. My health is mine. My time is mine, as I always say. It sounds like a selfish phrase, but nobody is going to bury themselves with us. No matter how much people love you, when they lower you into your tomb, no one is going to say, oh, can you bury me with him? No, no one. No one. I'm aware of that. Nobody wants to bury themselves with me. So, with you until death is a very nice metaphor, but in the end, it's us who's going to receive that receipt of all the harm. So it's very important to understand that there are two types of limits. There are the defining limits that define us, and then there are the protecting limits which protect us. Each type of limit has a distinct purpose, but we should count on both. And it's extremely important to understand the difference because limits, the defining limits, are our values, our convictions that establish who we are and who we are not. The church's doctrine cannot establish that for us. No, these are our own values. It's the core of our identity, and it's non-negotiable. It's not up for debate. You say, these are my convictions. These are the defining limits. What defines me? Then there are the protecting limits, which are different because they are designed to take care of our heart, to guard our heart. Above all things, guard your heart, because from it flows life. So there are occasions in which we have to protect our values, our emotions, our talents, our time, our energy from people that maybe without a bad intention, but they can drain us. And they can take away our oil, and they can take away the purpose for which we were called. Why are there people like this? Well, because we are like this. Because we exaggerate, sometimes we're obsessive, and we can drain someone else. So we're obligated to say tense phrases like, look, if you continue to come to rehearsal late, or if you continue to come to practice late, I'm going to have to leave you or let you go from the team. That's not a lack of Christianity or a lack of love. That's a limit. Respect other people's times. Respect my time. To say, for example, I need you to have better work ethic here in the office. If not, then I'm going to be obligated to replacing you. I love you. I like you a lot, but I need you to give it all the same way we all do. I'm not asking you for a greater level of commitment than what I'm offering. Or, look, if you continue to spend beyond the budget, I'm going to have to restrict your credit card with all the pain in my soul. It's not that I don't love you, but there's a budget we have to follow. Or, I cannot lend you any more money, my friend, until I see that you're making a serious effort to find a job. I already have children. I'm not going to maintain a friend. That's not a lack of love. It's a limit. Of course, my son, that I can take you to your friend's house. But if you're going to sit with your AirPods on, isolated from the world the whole way there, then pay for an Uber because I'm not your chauffeur. If we're going to share the ride and the whole time you're then just pay for your Uber. But isn't that a lack of love? No, that's a limit. You're not an Uber driver for your child. Of course, son. Of course, daughter. I love that you bring my grandchildren over, but I don't like to feel that you're using me as a nanny. I don't like when you bring them because you're going out. I'd like it if you brought them, even when you're not in need of a babysitter. Now, we don't want to say these phrases, so we concede. What I'm about to say, our emotional and spiritual health depend on. The raw reality, I want to make this clear, is that when you draw these lines, like the ones that I gave as examples, or the hundreds that I didn't mention, other people have the right to reject our protecting or defining limits. If they get offended, of course, because they also have their limits and their liberty to give their opinion that we're being unfair, that we're bad parents, that we're bad friends, that we're selfish, that we're bad people, that we're not loving, that we lack empathy. They're not going to applaud us and say, "Oh, good thing you drew out your limits." No, we have the right to draw that barrier. But others are also well within their rights to not agree with these limits and boundaries. For our own emotional health, we have to know this. But even then, if we're unwilling for that other person's emotional terrorism to stop us from doing what's right, if we're not willing, if we say, "No, I don't want them to be emotional terrorists anymore," we're going to continue to concede. But here's the point. Our limits are going to produce immediately, first of all, a space between us and the person that is a part of our life. It can be an employee, a friend, a spouse, a child, a parent, and that other person is going to have to make the decision of either building a bridge between that separation or getting offended and increasing the distance by distancing themselves even more, or even abandoning that relationship. I've had to confront employees and say to them, "Hey, that's not what I asked you to do. I don't like that you're always watching the clock and at 5:01 you're gone. I'm also not asking you to stay an hour extra, but it can't be that at 5 you're like this trying to see when you're going to turn off your computer. At 5:01 you're nowhere to be found. Your shift starts at 9, but at 8:59 you're nowhere to be found, and at 9 the Lord brings you right on the dot. It seems like you're waiting outside to come in. I'd love for you to give an extra mile 5 minutes before, I don't know." And they've said to me, "Well, they don't pay me for those 5 minutes. I don't want to be exploited either." So my request sounded like an exploitation. Staying or leaving is always a personal decision that God gave each person in any aspect of life. Joshua 24:15 says, "And if it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve." From Genesis to Revelations, all of Scripture shouts, freedom. Choose. From the Garden of Eden to the last chapter of Revelations, it's choose what you're going to do. I clarify this because some tend to say, well, I drew my limits and it went terribly. It didn't work out. I ended up distancing myself from my friend. Well, that's what limits are for sometimes. My pastor friend could say, well, I fixed my limits within the congregation, and some families left the church because they had the opinion that I didn't care about the sheep anymore, that why don't I answer my phone at 3 a.m. anymore, that I went cold, that I don't love the people anymore. And he said, they're leaving me. It's a right. Or the woman in my second example could say, well, I told my mother that I wouldn't spend the holidays with her, and she got offended. She stopped talking to me. But setting a limit doesn't imply that the other person doesn't have the right to get upset. That's the price that you have to pay. And if not, people will do whatever they want with our lives. Drawing our boundaries doesn't mean that the other person is necessarily obligated to changing. Oh, I drew the boundary and they didn't change. Yeah, but there's people that will never change. I've had family members that have said to me, you're in the United States and you should help me out. let's keep in mind that it's not one of my children that's telling me. But I would also say to them, if you're an adult, I don't have to take care of you. So if I've had family members say, well, hey, you did well, send some dollars over here. Imagine having to sustain all these lazy people because I did better. So I have to draw that limit. First of all, people have to understand that the fantasy that you open up a faucet here in Washington's pour out, that doesn't exist. And second of all, I don't have any obligation, so they cut their relationships with me. Oh, well, it looks like fame changed you. No, fame didn't change me. I just set a limit. I would set that limit whether I was famous or not. Because that limit has to do with, why should I have to work for so many people that never give me the time of day, and now suddenly I have to help them out, because otherwise I'm not a good Christian that doesn't live what he preaches. So the point is that we have to be aware of the limits of our feelings, of our conduct, and of our capacities. For example, to ignore our feelings. There are many people that ignore their own feelings. And that's one of the most destructive things that we can do to ourselves. Let's not even mention the other person. Solomon writes in Proverbs 26:23 about people that don't take responsibility for their feelings, and as such, they become dishonest people, seals that just applause. He says, like the glaze covering an earthen vessel are fervent lips with an evil heart. Whoever hates disguises himself with his lips and harbors deceit in his heart. When he speaks graciously, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. It'd be great to send a holiday greeting like this to your friends, right? Though his hatred covered with deception, his wickedness will be exposed in the assembly. Solomon speaks about this. He says that there are people that tell you that everything's okay, but behind your back they say something else because they're not honest. They're not honest with their feelings. Jesus clarified limits by ordering people to become responsible for what they felt. I don't know if you remember the story in Matthew 20 of the workers that were hired for the same salary, even though they worked different hours. Those that were hired at the beginning of the day were upset with those that had only worked at the end of the day, yet they received the same salary. They said, hey, but these people that were hired at the end, they only worked for 1 hour. And then they told the boss, but you treated them like us. We had to deal with the burden of all the work and the heat of the sun. They didn't work like us. That's where the first union was created. What did Jesus do? He made them take responsibility for their feelings, and he pointed out that he had the right to do whatever he wanted with his money. He said, I am doing you no wrong. How much did I say I would pay you? Well, did I pay that? Yeah. Didn't you accept to work for that pay? So where did I deceive you? Where did I trick you? Take your money and go, you fool. I choose to give this last worker as I give to you. And what? Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or do you begrudge my generosity? Why should you be counting the other person's ribs? Hey, you paid the other person the same. What does that have to do with you? Did I deceive you? No. If I want to give money away, but I'm paying you for your work, but if I want to give my money away to someone else even though they didn't do anything, what's your problem? Jesus is basically saying in the story, take responsibility for your own anger. Your anger comes from your envy. You have to deal with that. Don't blame me. Because sometimes we're going through life saying, no, but life is unfair. My boss is unfair. And that's your feeling. Another aspect that resides within our responsibility and limits is our conduct, not just our feelings, but also our conduct, the way in which we act. This law is called the law of sowing and harvesting, which governs the entire universe for the good and for the wicked. Irresponsible people hate this law because they suffer it. Paul says in Galatians 6:7, do not be deceived, God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. For the one who sows to his own flesh will from the flesh reap corruption, but the one who sows to the Spirit will from the Spirit reap eternal life. So, we are responsible for our own limits and actions. Proverbs 10:4 adds, "A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich." So just like the laws of physics, for every action there is an equivalent reaction. If we want to be healthy, we have to eat healthy. You have to exercise. There's a certain age where if you don't begin to eat healthy, it's going to take us to our tomb before our time. And we can say, "Why did God allow it?" No, it wasn't God. It was bacon. It was the fat. It was junk food which accelerated your time. It wasn't the Lord. If we want to have money for our mortgage or our rent, then we must work. God had the intention that we have that feeling of power and limits over our lives. He gave us limits. He said, that's your territory. That's your garden. And a lot of times in life, our well-being depends on our actions. God is not a firefighter that will always come and save us. That's why Paul writes in 2 Thessalonians 3:10, "If anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat." Nowadays, they would say, "Oh, how harsh." The collective of the lazies, the Christian Castro Club would say, "Why did he say that?" No, it's not that he's lazy, but I'm saying because Christian says he does nothing. They would say, "Why did Paul say that?" Maybe we can't say what Adam said, "Oh, the woman you gave me," or what Eve said, "Oh, the serpent that came in." No, it's not someone else's fault. Sometimes it's our own fault for a lack of sowing. However, if our limits are unclear, if it's not clear to us what our garden is and what the other person's garden is, we may even interfere in someone else's sowing and harvesting. I once said this before. God's law says that people that don't want to work, not that they can't, people that don't want to work, let them not eat. But this law can be interfered by someone who is always helping someone that doesn't want to work, that doesn't like to work. There are people that become a cane. They live off a cane. Instead of asking for new legs, they ask for a new cane. Maybe there are people that haven't sowed anything, but they're harvesting food. Why? Because there's a facilitator, as it has happened in so many of our countries, with social plans of well-being, that made it so that entire generations don't know what it means to work, because they're always waiting on the government check. People even receive more money for having bigger families, so it's better for them to make more kids than to go out and work. It's more fun in the end, isn't it? So, protecting our friends, our children, from the consequences of their conduct is not biblical. It's not being a bad parent to say, "Oh, well, I'm not going to save you your entire life. I gave you tools, but now you have to work." So God gives us gravity so that we can learn to walk. He gave us our salaries so that we can learn to work. And if we're not given limits or consequences for our conduct, we'll be out of control. There are children, especially children in these days, in this season, in our generation, children that are taught that they can have whatever they want, and that if they get into problems, someone will save them, because helicopter mom or helicopter dad is always there in case the teacher said something inconvenient. They'll go and burn the school because my little girl doesn't deserve it. No, that little boy is Nebuchadnezzar mixed with, but the parents go to rescue them, and then those little children become adults, and they think that there's always going to be mom or dad that will save them, and they live at everyone's expense, and they're going through life thinking that the world owes them something. Who was at fault? The parents, because they didn't set those limits. Because it doesn't matter that now we have the money that our parents didn't have when they were younger, because we tell our kids, "Oh, we don't have anything. There's nothing." We inherited the same underwear, the same shoes, the same pants, because there was nothing. That's what our parents would say to us. "There's nothing. Deal with it. We don't have anything." I had a pair of jeans that we had to undo the folds at the bottom, the cuffs. As I grew taller and taller, and my teachers would be able to guess my age based on the number of lines, like trees. But now we're parents with guilt because now we do have more means. Now we may be able to buy a new pair of jeans, and our kids say, "Mom, I wanna get new jeans. They don't wear these anymore." Yes, yes, son, yes. But life won't be that way. Life as an adult won't be like this. There won't be someone that will run to them to give them all that they want so that they don't get traumatized. So you have to find the balance between, yeah, well, I don't want to say to you that we don't have any money like they used to say to us. You can set a limit like, you know what, we do have money, but I don't want to. What, you don't have money? Yeah, I do. And? Well, I mean, since when are we partners? Our children say, but I mean, don't use money, just use your card, as if that's not money, right? Another aspect that resides in our responsibility and limits are capacities and talents. There are many people that don't explore their own talents, and they live through what other people want, and that's very serious. Lives have been lost. I mean, purposes of life have been lost due to this. People that deny their own talents, their gifts, or they indirectly live through the gifts of others. Since I've had the use of reason, I remember that I was a child with many limitations, academic shortcomings, but I was extremely artistic and creative. As far back as I can remember, writing, drawing, I would shoot my own movies in my imagination, of course, but I was extremely creative. My parents decided that I had to study the same career as my older brother because that career had a laborious opportunity. Remember that phrase? Everything else is going to make you go hungry, but with this career you'll find a job. So they sent me to a German school, Siemens, to study electronics. I wasn't created to study electronics. I don't think I was created to study almost anything. So I suffered through it. I suffered, but I suffered. And one day I took courage and I told my parents, I'm not my brother. I'll never be a technician or a telephony technician. No, but you know what? They give you all the tools, they give you all the books, they'll teach you. Yeah, but that's not who I am. It will not happen. But your brother hung a diploma on the wall. I'm not going to hang anything on the wall. Maybe a frame from Ross. And I had to go through the arduous task of discovering myself separate from my parents, especially from my mother, because my dad in the end would say, let him do what he wants. But my mother was an expert in emotional terrorism. My mother was Putin. She was an expert in manipulation. She let go of my hand. I left. My dad went to sign that I was leaving the school in my second year of high school. And when I got home, my dad wasn't talking to me. He said, "Well, you're gonna have to go work at the carpentry, my son." He didn't even let me rest one day. The next day I was at the carpentry. I said, "I can't rest." And he said, "No, are you crazy? I don't want lazy people here. Go work." But my mom gave me the absolute silent treatment. She didn't speak to me again. For months, she didn't speak to me. Just the necessary things. It was like immigration. She would just answer to what I asked. You good, Mom? I'm good. Mom, today they're going to pay me extra at the carpentry because I worked extra hours. Oh, congratulations. She then forgot why she was giving me the silent treatment. She then realized, oh, well, I guess this is the son that I don't speak to as much, but then she forgot about it. But it was worth it because otherwise I wouldn't be here. I would be fixing phones. So, we try to please others so much that we lose our own identity and our own purpose. We can't follow or we can't study a career just because it makes mom happy. I'm sorry, moms, but you cannot take hold of your children's lives. I want you to finish what I wasn't able to finish. Your child is not an extension of you. In fact, our children are not ours. They're lent to us. In their time, they're going to fly their own flight, and if they want, out of love, they will return. You think that you have a child to make them in your own image and likeness. No! No, it's cruel to think that they have to sing the music that I like. They have to follow. I don't understand why they sing that if it's not what they should. I don't understand if I brought them up in a different way. It's like with us, but we just forget. But the majority of us decided to fly our own flight. We cannot allow other people's desires to interfere with the design that God had for us. If not, God would have said, look, Moses, I have a plan for you. Go and set my people free. But careful, make sure your mom agrees. Because the last thing I want is for your mom to be upset. Peter 4:10 said it in this way: as each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. And Jesus clarified it in this way in Matthew 25:15. He said, to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. What does that mean? That we're not all made in series. That some of us have capacity for certain things, others for other things. So you have to take responsibility for your attitudes, for your feelings, for your desires. But here's another aspect that resides within our responsibilities and limits. More than ever, it's our desires. So what makes us jump out of bed every morning? Philippians 2:12 says, therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. Wanting to do something is placed by God. You cannot go around saying, well, what I'm trying to do, is it from the flesh? Is it from the devil? Obviously, when we know that it's sin, you don't need much confirmation. But when you say, but I have an inclination towards this, to the artistic, to the creative, to math, to whatever it is, it's because God placed that in us. God wired us in a certain way. The majority of us went through the frustrating experience, and tell me if it's not true, of being with people that never say what they truly want. They don't say it to you. We know that they have desires because everyone has desires, but they cannot articulate it in words. And you say, oh, they're so humble, they never ask for anything. But they become frustrating. I'm talking about those people when you ask them where they want to eat and what they want to eat. I want to invite you. Where do you want to eat? What do you want to eat? Oh, no, any place is fine. I'll adapt. Well, what do you want to eat? Any little thing. Yeah, but since I'm inviting you, what little thing would you like to eat? Whatever you choose, you pick. Whatever, I'll just eat from your plate. You take that person to any little place, and then they show it with their face that they don't like the place. You ask, you order any little thing, and then they say to you, it's a shame that you ordered sushi. I don't really like fish. Yeah, but you said any little thing. Yeah, but not raw. Oh, yeah, but don't worry, I brought myself a juice. So they make you feel like a lousy person because they can never tell you their true desires. I want this, I would love this, I dream of eating here. But they disguise that with false humility. I'll deal with whatever. Just like I speak about my mother, my dad was like this. Dad, you want to sleep over? Oh, but I don't have a bed. Oh, but you know what? I'll sleep in any corner. I'll sleep on the floor. And then in the morning he says, oh, my back is shot. Oh, I'm suffering. For a relationship to be fruitful, the two separate people have to work on what they like and what they don't like in a particular way by giving and receiving. So when we're aware of our own desires, that's what it means to draw a limit. In fact, it's easier to reach your goals, your purpose, because you know what it is you desire and what you don't. Proverbs 16. 26 says, a worker's appetite works for him. His mouth urges him on. So, figuring out what our desires are motivates our efforts. Why are you working? Out of hunger or out of pleasure? You have to recognize it. Why do we do what we do? It's as if I were to say, oh, no, I don't like to preach. Honestly, I suffer through it. I come up here with shame. No, I love it. I've come here sick. I've had better days than others, but I cannot pretend to be humble and say, no, I don't like it. No, of course I like it. You have to recognize that which is your primary desire. The author of Ecclesiastes says it in his own way. He says, walk in the ways of your heart and the sight of your eyes, but know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. So we're called to be aware of our desires, but at the same time, we should include God in those desires and goals. So to summarize, if we don't set clear limits, we won't be able to make decisions about what is correct, but we're always going to be making decisions based on what others say is correct, and sometimes it's not our calling. Jesus said, woe to you when everyone praises you. If we're always trying to make sure that the world around us is happy, we're never going to live freely or correctly. We won't make everyone happy ever. You might say, oh, well, River is a church of excellence. They begin punctually. There's always fresh word. There's good music. However, there are people that leave this congregation very unhappy, saying they lack this, that, and the other, and they're right. What wouldn't make sense is if I thought, oh, but why are they leaving? I don't get it. No, well, as people, we all have that right. People go to Disneyland and they get bored. And there are others that have a phenomenal time. They waited their entire lifetime to see the mouse. And others say, really, I waited all the time just to see this filth? And you think that Disney is worried about those that are unhappy? So listen to this truth that I heard through pain. We'll never be able to determine whether we're good or bad people, if we're good or bad Christians, based on who's happy or unhappy with us. Careful, that's not the barometer. Because if we feel responsible for someone else's unhappiness, then we're being controlled by these people and not by God. That's the main problem with the lack of limits. If Jesus had tried to make the entire world happy, he would have made the Pharisees happy, he wouldn't have gone to the cross, and today we would all be lost. If selfish and manipulative people get upset with us, it means that we are finally learning to say no. There are people that say to you, can I ask you for a favor? No, they're not asking you for a favor. They're saying, if you don't accept what I'm asking for, there's going to be a serious issue between you and I. And if you can discern that, you have to say, well, can I count on saying no? Or is this, can I ask you for a favor, almost a disguised obligation? I like to answer with yes and no by saying, you know what, I can't help you tomorrow, but Saturday's my day. Oh, well, where's the friendship? Yeah, I don't measure my friendships by saying yes to everything. If abusive people are not pleased by us, it means that we're sub-elevating ourselves to the abuse. If the Pharisee Christians and the haters online are judging us, it means that we are looking more and more like Jesus, and that's good. If our parents, in fact, don't approve all of our decisions that we make as adults, it means that we're growing and becoming adults. Because I know many people that cannot make decisions out of fear of offending their father. But it's not a 14-year-old boy. No, it's a 50-year-old person that doesn't want to offend dad. Dad will get offended or not, and that's his problem. Luke 6:22 says, blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you and revile you and spurn your name as evil on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy. For behold, your reward is great in heaven. So every time that I give a message, I can see how I'm doing based on the reactions. If people If broken people, people that suffer, if they feel understood, and the evangelicals that hate, if they criticize me, I know I'm doing my job well. Now, if the broken people or those that suffer are the ones that begin to hate me, then I lost my compass, I lost the heart of God, and I have to reevaluate myself because I've failed in having empathy and in preaching grace and truth. So every time people hate us because we offer grace and truth, then we're on the right path. They're confirming to us that we're on the right path. But we have to decide that no one is going to manipulate us. We have someone that asks us for something, and because we say no, they offer us the silent treatment or they give us a face. It's not that we're bad people. Because we say, oh, well, I feel bad, I don't want to hurt them. But if they are invading into my side of the fence, then I'm going to end up hurt. What does manipulation consist of? Oh, well, if you truly love me, you're going to do what I'm asking of you. Or, they say it to me all the time, if you're a true servant of God, then you would preach about this, that, and the other, about the rapture and repent. When someone says, if you love me, you'll do this, then they're crossing our frontiers and they're taking away our option of being free and how we're going to love. They're telling us how we should even love. It's like when someone says to us, hey, can I tell you something, but don't get mad. No, don't put conditions on me. Don't manage my feelings because surely I'll get upset. Because if it appears to you that I'm going to get upset and you have to tell me, hey, can I tell you something, but don't get mad, then I'm going to get mad. That phrase already makes me mad. Because you want to manipulate my emotions and you haven't even said what you're going to say. So this about, if you love me, you'll do this thing. It's even found in the statement of Jesus, don't test the Lord your God. Oh, well, if God loves me, let him send me a partner. You're denying God's freedom of being himself and of loving us how he wants to love us. God cannot be manipulated, not with pacts of money or prophetic declarations or decrees or pronunciations. God cannot be manipulated. Are we free to ask him for whatever we want? Yes, but he will either opt to give it to us or opt to not give it to us. That's a real relationship. It's not, oh, if God loves me, he has to give it to me. Why? God is not a prostitute. So I want to make this clear once again. It's great to be sensible to other people's emotions, but it's not okay to be responsible for how others feel. They're not our feelings. Being responsible for someone else's feelings is, in reality, the most insensible thing we can do because we're crossing someone else's territory. It doesn't correspond to us to gather our neighbor's leaves. Other people should become responsible for their own emotions. Now people are watching me, and I cannot manage that some love me profoundly or that others hate me profoundly. I cannot control that. And others have to spew out their venom, and they're going to write it online. Now, if they are mature, then they'll process their own disillusionment. If they're not, then they'll blame me for their own disappointment. But to deal with disappointment and guilt is their responsibility, not mine. Remember the example of the 40-year-old woman that didn't know how to tell her mother that she didn't want to spend the holidays with her? She was tempted to telling her mother, oh, Mom, you made me come again. How did her mother act? In a manipulative way. Yes. But no one can be manipulated without their own permission. To be offended, I have to give you permission to offend me. If not, you won't offend me. Besides, if you don't know me, how can you offend me? If somebody insults me because they watch a 1-hour message, it's because I'm only showing a small piece of my life. No one can offend me without my permission. No one can manipulate me without my permission. So in the case of this daughter whose mother insists that she should spend New Year's with her, the mom isn't the villain in the movie. Yeah, she's manipulative, but she's not the bad guy in the movie. In reality, it's the adult daughter's fault because she's not responsible of her own limits, and she blames her mother. Even though she's 40 years old, she's blaming her mother because she's obligating her to do what she doesn't want to do. Really? And besides, she's going to go to her mother's home and do what? Like any good Hispanic, speak behind her mother's back. Oh, I'm so tired of all that my mother makes me do. Oh, good thing she's my mom, because if not, so then why doesn't she just tell her that she doesn't want to go? As adults, we can never blame anyone for what we choose to do. You choose what you want to do because you're an adult. When you're small, yes, but when you're an adult, who can you blame? And I want to finish with this idea. One of the purposes that a fence or a limit has, besides keeping out the good, or keeping in the good and keeping out the bad, is allowing the exchange between the good and the bad. That's why limits are good. If I had a farm, within on that fence I would have a door that would allow a truck to drive in with provisions, but I would also allow the garbage truck to remove all the waste. So spiritual frontiers allow good things in and allow them to reach our heart, but it also removes the bad things. These types of barriers leave all the bad things out. Spiritual gates allow an exchange between good and evil within our hearts. When we deny our manipulators, we're letting the waste go out. We're not allowing hate to exist within our limits. The manipulator doesn't know that they're a manipulator. Maybe they don't. We asked this mother, and she might say, oh, is it wrong for a mother to want to be with her daughter? I just wanted to spend New Year's with her. Oh, I bled myself dry for her. Maybe she doesn't know. Maybe she's an older woman. But who is then left with that resentment? She makes me do this. I can't understand it. The daughter. So many people are closed out behind gated doors. No, we need a door to have that exchange. This comes in, this goes out. Our limits tell us a lot about where we finish, where we end, and where the other person begins. With limits, we can know what we want, as opposed to what the other person wants. We can say, here's what I'm going to allow into my property in such a way that wickedness will not control my home. And besides, we can allow food in just the same way we let waste out. Beloved people, we love the whole world. It's the main commandment. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. But that love is not up for debate, but we also know that the real world is made up by controlling manipulators that exploit us. And if we block our children's capacity to say no, that they say no, then we're going to make them incapable for life. We'll disable them for life. We'll amputate their spirit, and there are no prosthetics for this. It's called the syndrome of complacency. Don't give it to your children. They gave it to me. It was the worst thing that I inherited from the Gebels. My dad would say, nah, don't say no. How hard is it to say yes? Why would you make them your enemy? So I would say yes to everything. And I lost so much time. There are so many people that from their adolescence they mix in with others just to fit in. And they make people believe that they like the same movies, the same fashion, that they like the same haircut, just to belong. They erase any differences between themselves and others to not cause problems or conflicts. Social psychologists say that this phenomenon is called pluralistic ignorance. Let me just join the ignorance, even though I disagree with it. It's like saying, eat manure because a million flies cannot be mistaken. And complacent people have a damaged spiritual radar, and they don't know how to guard their hearts, and one day they end up burnt out just like my friend, or bitter like the woman in my example. Their muscles of saying no are paralyzed, and it tends to be out of fear of hurting other people's feelings, fear of abandonment, fear of not being loved anymore, fear of separation, fear of the other person getting upset, that they'll stop loving us, fear that they'll think that we're not good Christians, fear that they'll think that we're not very spiritual. There is no guarantee that you're going to agree with what I always say to you, and vice versa. I fear that we're going to have to be very pragmatic, very direct. But this Sunday, September 7th, I invite you to draw your boundaries and to give ourselves the marvelous gift of no, and only then, with that no, will we know the truth, and that truth will truly set us free. Yes? Give a celebration to the Lord and say, Lord, you have spoken again this morning. Give that applause to the Lord to say, Lord, you've spoken to me. You have opened my eyes once more. Blessed are you. Someone has to celebrate more than that. Yes or no? Hallelujah! And yes, there will be someone that will say, oh, well, this message lacks love. No, love is not up for debate. Remember this, you only have a finite amount of time. Don't let that time be wasted. And honestly, you don't have much. If there's someone here that's 20, 30, and you say, oh, but I'm young. No, right around the corner, you're going to be combing your gray hairs or not combing anything at all. Life flies by us. Just yesterday, I was 20-something. No, really. It's a metaphor, people. Just yesterday, it's a metaphor, it's a poetic license. Just yesterday, I was 20-something years old, and I would say, oh, I'm going to do this, that, and the other, and I'm going to have enough life to do all this. And I don't know how it happened, but one day I realized that I'm closer to the tomb than to the crib, closer to the grave than to the uterus, like many of you. I don't know if you've counted how many years you might have left, but I measured it in Christmases. It'll surprise you when you say, wow, with tailwinds, I might have 10, 15, 20, 3 Christmases left. I don't know. That's without counting on the eventuality that nobody knows when it'll happen. That's just assuming that we'll all die at a very old age. But if God decides that our days are over, we're going to realize that time is something very precious to not put limits on. Our energy, let me not even mention. When I discovered why I was given my gasoline, I had to say no to many things, and by giving myself that no, it allowed me many quality yeses. If not, I'd be like the majority of pastors, bitter, sick, with the desire to throw in the towel because I carry all the problems that nobody ordered me to carry. I'm not anyone's Messiah. Let me clarify, I'm never going to die for any of you, and don't look at me with that face because none of you would die for me either. What I'm trying to say is that we're in this together, and each person has to draw their own limits and say, this is who I am, this is who I'm not, this is what I'm not. You can't imagine the amount of healing and liberty that brings. And it's not a lack of love. It means that some people will get upset. Others won't like it. But in the end, we'll be more authentic. I've been next to many deathbeds, accompanying those that are reaching their final station, and the pattern never changes. I always bring a chair close, and I ask them what they want to talk about. And if their mind has outlived their body, they never say to me, I regret this, I regret things that I did. Because, not because they don't have things to regret, but because I assume that they deal with it with the Lord. Lord, your blood covers it, and back. But you can't imagine the sadness in the people who regret things they didn't do. People that didn't say no, and they say to me, I lost so much time with friends that weren't worth it. I lost so much time in a dead church. There was no word, I didn't feel God, but you know, so many years there, what do I know? You end up loving the place, but I realized that I was wasting my time. How sad, because there they are, with their lives slipping through their hands, through their fingers. They can't hit rewind, they can't turn back. Why did I spend my life in an office in a factory when I could have been with my children, with my grandchildren? What good was it? 50 years in the same company. And on a Friday evening at 5 p.m., they kicked me out into the street. And I was left with a retirement that's not even enough to cover my mortgage. It's a shame that priorities are rearranged there in the last station, but Solomon said that wisdom is ordering your priorities beforehand, setting limits. This far, here's what I want. I'm not going to work like a madman because I'm not going to have enough life for all the money that I will eventually have. No, those that have more are not rich. Those that need less are rich. You're going to manage your time. That's what the wise do. May God give us wisdom to be truly free and wise this morning. Do we agree, yes or no? Let's pray. Father, thank you for this morning. I've transmitted once more what I believe you told me to tell your children, your little ones. I haven't omitted, I haven't added anything to what I know is your revelation. Father, I ask that a double portion of the Spirit reach each person, sealing these words. Help us to discern our time, energy. Help us, Lord, that each word remain recorded in our hearts. Lord, I am free from the blood of each person. I'm free from all their arbitrary decisions. But I know that your Holy Spirit has touched their hearts. Beloved church, I never ask you for anything but if you could just lift your hands to heaven and say, I surrender so that you may teach me. I surrender, I give myself up so that a new life may begin within me. Lord, I believe, I declare that each hand that raises is a hand of humility, a hand of surrender, of people saying, help me to be better. Give me that no. It's a gift that you have to give yourself. It won't come from heaven. God says, take the arbitration of your no. Fight for your dreams. Fight for your talents and your gifts. It may not be what your parents want. It may not be what your spouse desires. It may not be what your children want you to be. Be who God wanted you to be from your mother's womb. The Lord has chosen you. He has chosen you with a purpose. He has chosen you with a destiny. He has chosen you to open a path, to defeat, to plant. He has chosen you to manage. He has chosen you to administer. He has chosen you to open, to close. Know what God has placed in your heart. Be faithful to your calling. Remember the bush that burned before you. Live for a crowd of one. Live to please the one who called you. Whoever wants to understand, let them understand. If not, let them be responsible for their misunderstandings. But God says to you, be free. And may that freedom bring love. And may that freedom bring freshness. And may that freedom bring mercy. And may it bring generosity. And may God bless your life and your children's lives and all the generations that are to come from you until you have to pass to eternity. Father, I declare this word. Let it be sealed and immersed in their hearts. Seal it with the Holy Spirit. I declare it in your name, and we all say, amen. Let it be so. Beloved church, may God bless you, may He keep you, and we'll see you in 7 days. Bye. Blessings to all.